peeps, welcome to our inaugural video tutorial for Art for Healing. I am so happy to have you friends here and to be able to share this project with you. I know we've hyped it up a little bit in the Facebook group, and it's been really fun getting ready to make it, figuring out how to suspend my phone over my work table here and all that. And I've learned a lot, so I'm really excited to be able to make this tutorial and many others in the future. So today we are going to be making a grungy Valentine. And if you can see in the different lighting here, there is a nice kind of grungy, bronzy look in between the wrinkles and sort of in the background. As well as some inking on the edges and things that make this look really nice and grungy. Before we get started on how to do the project, I want to talk about some ways to really give it your own personal style when you're done doing the paint effects that we're going to learn today. I started with the idea of the key to the heart. And I had some wooden objects from Michael's that were about $1.50. And I thought, wow, that really goes together with Valentine's. It goes together with this tape that I'm going to use down here. And as I was looking through my stash, I thought, wow, there's just no end of ways that I can personalize this for different people in my life. So I could make quite a few and give them away as Valentine's presents this year. So for that special guy in your life, look at that. Isn't that awesome? I think it looks very masculine. I love the burnt wood detailing. It looks like burnt wood. The edges are nice and dark. The laser cutting is just beautiful. I also want you to notice when you're doing this yourself, to leave a part of the crayon going up above the edge of the canvas. That adds a little bit of height to your work as well as some visual interest. Anytime something is sort of out of the norm, it draws the eye to it. And the eye of this message is, you're the king of my life. For that special girl or special gal in your life, who doesn't love a tiara? This one, there's a really cool tattoo parlor in one of the old town parts of our town here in Wichita, Kansas. It's called Hell Bomb, and every time I drive by, they have pictures of their artwork in the window. And this piece here, what with the black stamping and whatnot, kind of makes me feel like this should hang in their window. And then the version that I'm probably going to do with this piece, once I'm done with the tutorial, is with these two pieces. I really love that a lot. So I would suggest leaving the wood pieces completely natural. That really goes with the overall look of the piece. However, if you don't have the key with the one birding look, you want to use some other wooden pieces. If you want to paint them, you do whatever you want with them to personalize this project for yourself. Let's talk a minute about the tape here. This is seam binding tape that's got a printed message on it. I had several different ones. This one I like the best. But you could do the same thing with a piece of paper that you've stamped a message on, or a saying, cardstock, watercolor paper, tissue paper. I mean, pretty much the sky's the limit on what you could do here. Or you can leave it off, and you could even handwrite a message to make it really personal. Now let's talk about supplies before we get going on our tutorial. You're going to need Liquitex glazing medium. Glazing medium is a fluid medium that you can use for all sorts of things. It does have a gloss finish to it. You can use it to thin out acrylic paints like this, and when you do and when you use them, it will have a gloss finish. So you can take a flat craft paint that you like and turn it into a gloss paint merely by using glazing medium. Today we're going to use this because we want the mediums to move, the medium paints to move around really easily on here. And a flat paint like this, or even a gloss paint, moves a lot easier on a glossy surface than it does on a kind of scratchy matte finish. So that's why this one is so important. I would not suggest using Mod Podge in any of the videos projects that I'm going to present on here. Mod Podge tends to stay sticky after it has dried, so it's not good for journal pages because they tend to stick together, and you definitely don't want artwork you know, feeling tacky or whatever. You want it to look as professional as possible. We are going to be using this as one step. This is UV Clear Krylon. It's a acrylic coating. This is also gloss. If it is not, it doesn't say gloss, but if it is matte, it will clearly say matte finish on here. So when you're buying these, be sure you're getting what you actually want. If you want to go gloss over gloss, you want to use this one. If you want to go matte over matte, you want to use the one that says matte. We only have 3 dyes and paints today, which makes this really easy. This is Delusion's Postbox Red, one of my favorite colors. I love all the Delusion sprays. Much of my artwork has Delusion sprays in it. We have a Michaels brand Craft Smart Ocean Breeze flat acrylic paint here. This is one that has a little bit of pigment and a lot of water, and I really love these for a lot of mixed media projects because of the fact that they are a little thinned out and you can get a lot of texture out of them. And last but not least, it's very important to get our grungy look. This is a Recollections brand glitter paint. It is the chocolate color. I want you to notice this. This is not like one of these paints that really has some body to it. This is a very thin paint with glitter in it. I don't know if you can see that, but this is how, using this is how we get this grungy look on here, where we can wipe it and scrape it hard and still see some of the white of the canvas board behind there. And yet it still kind of leaves a sparkly, cool, bronzy look, which gives that really nice grungy finish. As you saw, we did some stamping on our piece. It's going to be one of the last steps. Let's talk about stamps first. For the majority, except for a few where I couldn't get them off, I have peeled all of these off their wooden block, because I can store a lot more stamps in a small space this way, and also because if you put it on here using these guidelines, you could use any old piece of acrylic that you've got, but see, now you can see exactly where it goes. And so it's taking me a year of doing this over time. Sometimes you get banged up, kind of like I did here, peeling those back and whatnot, but boy, is it amazing. All right, so you're going to want to pick out a couple of stamps that you feel like go in the design. And again, kind of going off of that tattoo-y kind of look, I thought this one went really well here at the bottom because my red ink didn't quite make a V, so this kind of finished it out. And then some hearts to go in the middle. You don't have to use stamping, or you can. You pick out whatever works for you. Whatever you do, definitely be using, doesn't have to be Ranger brand, it could be StazOn, but Ranger or StazOn brand archival ink. This happens to be jet black. But you want to use an archival ink. This means that once it's dry, water is not going to reactivate it. If you use a dye-based ink on this, and then you put some kind of a finish over it, or happen to hit it with a little glazing medium or something, this would all smear and your design would be gone. So I suggest using this pretty much for everything. I do have a few uses where I do not use archival ink for a particular reason, but for the most part I've stocked up on archival inks of all colors, so I'm always prepared. Now here is an ink that is in that water activated type that we were talking about. And if at the very end of a project you know no other mediums are going to touch this, everything's dry and done, you can use this for, say, inking the edges of something. So I took this, and you can see it along here. I went on here and I inked the edges like that. So that's what this is for. Really, really, really love Tim Holtz inks, distress inks, for all kinds of projects. I love distressing things. So definitely try to get a few basic colors where you can do the edges if you love distressing things and making them look old. Now let's talk about tools. There's just a handful of basic tools. We have scraping tools. We have a round, really dense foam thing. This happens to be my Martha Stewart. You may have your own brand. Make sure that this one is very dense and does not give much, because when we're scraping on the acrylic paint here, you want to be able to really scrub with it and move the paint and kind of wear it out and thin it out. And a softer sponge may not do the trick. Plus, with it being round, when you're scrubbing, you don't get those little pointed edge marks that you would if it's a square. This is an all-purpose foam sponge that you can use for, that I use for my mediums. It gets a lot done really fast. A pen. You must sign your work. Sign all your work, even if you're doing this in a journal page. You may not be doing it on a canvas board. You may not get quite the same grungy look if you're doing it on paper, unless maybe you do it on watercolor paper. But whatever, always sign your work. Just get in the habit of it, even if it's in your journal. And always date it if it's in a journal. I like to use the Uniball Signo. This is the Micro 207. This also comes in white. These are my go-to sign over acrylic paint pens. And then, of course, we're working with some dyes and things like that, so we want to have some rubber gloves. Let's talk about scraping tools. I don't know if you can see this, but this says Bondo, B-O-N-D-O. This came in a pack of 3. So I've got a really big one, this size, and then a smaller one. As you can see, these are pretty stiff. If you really need to scrape the heck out of something, this is your go-to scraper. If you want to have more flexibility and to be able to move paint in a really flexible way, or mediums, you can use that almost in the same way that you can use this brush. In fact, a lot of times I will take this edge, which is a little firmer, okay, not so firm, medium firm, really firm. I'll use this one or this one to spread my gesso on a canvas or a piece of paper. It just, 3 swipes and you're done. For the string, I want to show you something that I do, because all of my pieces have some kind of recycling or upcycling happening in them. This was actually, this wad of stuff is actually supposed to be some kind of a scarf that you wore around your neck. And I saw it at a thrift store, and I just love the string in there. And so anytime I need a string, I just start pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling until I get the length that I need out of there. I snip it off, and then I'm left with this wad. When it's gone, it's gone. But I didn't have to go buy a whole skein of expensive yarn. I think I got this maybe for 10 cents. And I can use this in all kinds of projects because there's a little gold in there, pink, blue, gray, iridescent. It's amazing. So be on the lookout for things like this. They can be some of your favorites. Of course, I always have the proverbial baby wipes everywhere you go, right? With our artwork. Okay, let's get into the project. Okay, so this kind of all happened as an accident, as a lot of my art does. I'm very exploratory when it comes to my art because it's abstract and I'm not trying to represent anything in particular, and sometimes something actually does represent, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute, that looks like a blank blank blank. So the other day I was messing around with waxed paper. So this is just cheap wax paper from the grocery store, and I was thinking about making a Valentine's video, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do, and I said, ooh, I wonder what happens if I spray Delusions ink on wadded up wax paper, and voila, I got this really interesting effect that looks a bit like a heart, as you can see. I didn't end up using this one because I had also drawn some other things on there, but I thought, you know, waste not, want not. Anytime I hand make a paper, I use it for something. So I took some of my gloss medium, you could also use matte medium, and I put the glue on one side of the tag, and then I put the paper on top of it, made sure it was down the edges. So you can see here what's happened. I'm going to be cutting around this, and I will use this tag. I can use this tag for just about anything that I want red on. So I'll use up the rest of this paper for covering tags. For this tutorial, I attempted to make another heart, and didn't do my original technique the same way, and so I kind of ended up with a flub, but nothing's a flub, right? So I can use this, I can tear this in strips and put it in my art journal. I can cover tags with this, or I can use it in some other way on another canvas board later. So I just want to let you know that wax paper is cheap. If at first you don't succeed doing this technique, don't throw away what's left. Let it dry thoroughly. Spray it outside with some UV clear acrylic coating so that this water-based ink doesn't reactivate too much when you go to use it, pasting it on a tag or in a journal page or something like that. Alright, so let's get down to business. One other tool that I didn't mention is that you'll need a heat tool for this. What we want to do is we want to impregnate this ink color into the wax a bit, so that it's not just hanging on top of the wax. So the first thing I did is I wadded up my wax paper, and you want to wad it up pretty darn good. As you can see, the cells in this are, you know, I mean, there's big ones and little ones. I mean, medium-sized ones and little ones. That's the kind of effect you want. Wad it up pretty darn good. You're going to flatten it out, and then you're going to fold it where the edges are straight here and here, because you want your heart to be centered here. You don't want your heart to be wonky. Alright, so wad it up, fold it in half, unfold it. Let me tell you what I use underneath that I love, love, love. This is Reynolds nonstick foil. This stuff is so amazing. If you need to do something, it's heat resistant, so that you don't melt what other substrate you have, your desk, your dining room table, whatever. This is heat resistant, it's not going to melt, and it also is medium resistant, which means whatever is on here you can just wipe off so you can keep using this. So if you can't afford a Ranger mat or a silicone cooking mat as your substrate for working, go to your store and get some Reynolds nonstick wrap, and you are in like Flynn. All right. So I've got this. The other tool I didn't mention earlier is a heat tool. This is a Milwaukee heat tool. This is really high power and really hot. A little bit goes a long way. You have to be careful about not holding this too close to something, especially like wax paper or deli paper, because it'll start to yellow the paper as it starts to burn it a little bit. And you also have to be careful when you're putting it down. Always use your stand so that it's safe and this hot point isn't getting on anything flammable. This is going to get loud, and I apologize for that, but thankfully we don't have to have this on for a long time. Before we do this, I want to show you one that I did without wrinkling up the wax paper and kind of show you the difference. So this heart shape actually turned out really, really nicely, and I love the fact that it's got almost like a doily effect around it. And so I am going to use this for a project, but it doesn't have the open cells and spaces like this does on this one. And I think, or this one, and I think that's kind of what makes it really look grungy. So if you don't like super, super grungy, you can always just try this version that has it straight like this. You know, whatever floats your boat. All right, now, here is where the magic happens. This is the reason you have this fold here, is so that you can eyeball where the middle of the heart's going to be so you can control your spray. Now, a little of this spray goes a long way. You really don't need a lot to get the effect that we're going. In fact, the more you use, the less mottled and grungy it's going to look. So you don't want to sit here and saturate the paper. A little light spraying, and then you're going to see what happens. The real magic happens when we turn on the heat gun. So you're going to think about doing it on this half. So you want a bigger circle here, and then a smaller circle as we go down here. So I'll show you how I did this. And of course, my spray is not coming out round. There we go. A little better. Oh no! In the magic of live television, of course, my spray came out like crescent moons instead of round. All right, well, we're going to go with this. See how it bubbles up? We can always tear this into the heart shape, so it's okay that it didn't come out quite right as intended. And, you know, this may happen to you too, in which case, run your point under, your spray under hot water. All right, so here, and now you don't want to scrub, you just want to go flat. See how it's kind of going into those cells there? You can also control the shape with your hands and what you're doing here with this. So you want to leave that down like that. And then bring this out. We can tear this off down here, not to worry. Okay, so you've got your big cells inked up. Now, you see what's happening here? I love the way it kind of blooms under the heat. And this is another way you can kind of control your shape. You do one side, And then you're going to do the other. Alright, that's it. And then you're going to open this up before that wax sets. Alright, so you've got I have a little excess ink because my spray didn't come out quite right. We are going to, there's a couple things you could do. You could dab that with a paper towel. Or you can let this dry until all of that dries. And then those spots come out a little darker. I'm going to try a little dabbing. Just so you know you can do that. Alright. Now, it looks like somebody had a bloody nose, but they didn't, so I'm just going to get rid of that. And so I don't get this ink all over everything else we do today, I'm going to toss these. And by the magic of television, I'm going to show you the prepared one that I have. And you can see how when this comes out round, you can achieve the spray here, and then a little less spray and a little less spray. So we're going to use this one. I'm going to take a little baby wipe here. The spray kind of gets everywhere, so you want to definitely make sure that you are working in a protected spot. If you come along another day and you reactivate that little dried spray on your work surface, you may end up with red where you don't want red. Alright. Okay. So, I'm going to put on a clean pair of gloves. It doesn't have any red on it. For the rest of this, so I don't accidentally get red ink on my canvas board. So this is an inexpensive Artist Loft Michaels canvas board. It's, I believe it's 9 by 12 or 14. When you're doing your heart, you want to make sure that the size of it, the height of it, is going to work up and down on your canvas board. So the one that I just made, that got a little out of control because of the spray, came right down to here, which is probably a little bigger than I wanted. So keep it more in this size. So just like our final product here, it's, you know, it comes down, if we divide this into thirds, it comes down to about 2/3 of the way down. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tear around the edges here. Again, don't throw these away. You can use this for something later. This canvas board is already pre-gessoed, so you don't have to worry about putting another coat of gesso on there for this project. The great thing about using crinkly things is that as you're working on them and tearing them, it doesn't matter if they get a little more crinkly. So if you'll notice where I have some of these kind of sticking out right here, I'm going to try to round those around in the shape of the heart. Here I want to try to dip down a little bit. And then sometimes I find it as a right-handed person that it's a little easier to turn it over so that I can tear the other way around. So I tested it out. I put that on there. I'm like, I like the way that looks. All right. So remember, this has been coated on both sides with UV resistant clear by Krylon. This ink is very water reactive. This is still going to react a bit with the glazing medium, but that's okay because we're going to be covering it up with something else. So as you can see, this goes really fast. I'm putting a really good coat on there because paper will suck it right up. You want to make sure this is centered because you do have this line going down here. All right, so I kind of glue that down with one side and put a little bit more of a coat. Anytime you've pre-varnished something with this, it becomes a little more glue resistant, if you will. As you can see, I've got a little red coming off mine, which is just fine. It just creates a kind of a neat undertone. And because it may show through a little bit, I am kind of doing it like rays of the sun, which I think kind of gives that a cool look. All right, so like I said, use plenty of this, but don't scrape so hard that you're scraping out these awesome wrinkles. You really want those wrinkles in there. The one thing to make sure is happening is that the edges are firmly glued down. So I just take that and put a little extra pressure on with my glove. Okay. We'll wash that later. So now, I don't know if you can see it in the light or not. Some of these wrinkles are just a tiny bit big. We want to make sure that everything is firmly glued down. So I'm kind of going around here, kind of with an up and down patting motion, kind of rearranging those a little bit. All right, now we're going to let this dry for just a minute. I'm going to make sure the glazing medium dries thoroughly. I'm going to clean my hands off here. I'm going to let this air dry just for a few minutes. It really goes pretty fast, especially if it's not a humid day outside. It's winter here right now, and so it's one of our drier seasons. All right, now I'm going to hit it again a little bit with my heat gun, kind of try to finish the drying process. Notice how high I'm holding the heat tool away from the painting. I'm really not trying to bubble up the medium, just kind of help the drying process along. Okay, now things are going to move along really quickly now. And I don't want you to be scared of what's about to happen. I'm going to get out a piece of wax paper to lay my tools on here. I actually like to work with the next layer of paint, which is the Chocolate Recollections glitter paint. Well, this is just a little bit tacky. Now, if you're not as brave as me, you can put some of this in a puddle somewhere else and like paint it on or deliver it some other way. But I'm going to put it here, about like that. And I am going to scrape like a crazy person. The glitter paint dries really quickly, so you have to really keep it moving along. It's okay if some of those spots turn out white like that. That's just going to add to the overall grunginess when we're all done. As you can see, I'm using quite a bit of pressure, which is why you want this really stiff Bondo scraper. So as you can see, I'm kind of like scraping along. I'm getting like some lines and things going on in there. I don't want the heart to have too much brown in it, so I'm just kind of being careful how much I leave on there. I feel like this needs a little bit more. Okay. Alright, so you see how you're scrubbing that along and you end up with this really, really amazing grungy look. And I love the little scratch marks and stuff. Now you can see how that having a little bit of that red in the background before we put the glitter paint on has created a really neat underlayment. So the layers kind of go from white to this bronzy look to a little bit of pink in there, which is very Valentine-y. That glitter paint is really sticky, so I'm going to clean this off before it gets stuck on there forever. That is one that has a little bit of a stink to it. I'm not sure what the base is, but probably it'd be a good idea to have a window open for that one. Alright, so I want to pick this up and show you in the light kind of what we've got going on here. Okay. And now you're starting to see just how quick this project actually goes. Now, I am going to make a puddle of this. And once again, if you're not brave enough to just pour paint right on your canvas, that's fine. But I found that especially when I'm doing abstract, grungy type stuff, often when I do that, I get the best effects. So what I'm going to do here, and like this is a whole other effect. You could just leave it like this, honestly, and it would be fine if you like that look. I'm going to take my stiff sponge, and I'm going to start scrubbing this around. And if I've got a little too much, because I don't want too much. I want this to be a little bit thin. Now here's where you have to be a little bit careful. And going around your heart shape, I mean. Okay. Now I'm patting off the excess paint because you're like, oh no, she's ruining it. Right? Okay. That's what I did. Now make sure I've got it everywhere. Alright, now I'm going to let it dry just a second. I'm going to take my wipey and wipe Okay, so as you can see, I'm actually wiping off some of the paint, not only on the heart, but on the canvas itself, because I really want to expose some of that awesome bronzing. Take one more. Clean bits of this up so that that red really shows through and isn't so antiqued. So you just use the tip of your finger to kind of get it where you want it. Okay, and then I'm going to take some of this paint here, and with a very light touch, I'm going to go sideways. Most of these wrinkles go this way, so I'm going to go the other way so that I can get the tops of the heart. And so you just kind of keep working and dabbing. And getting it how you want. Okay, I'm going to take a heat gun to this again. I'm going to kind of take this into the light, and I want to get rid of some of that smokiness. So that I can really get some of that bright red peeking out there. This is also how I can define the shape of my heart. As well. I love how some of this kind of turned orange. Every time I make one of these, they come out different, which I love so much. Want to make sure as you're working that the sides of your heart are coming out to about the same width. This one looks a little skimpy over here, so I might work in a little bit more. All right, now with a very, very light touch, I'm going to skim the tops of the wrinkles. All right, then I'm going to come back in here and wipe off some of the unnecessary. So I always let a piece talk to me. If it feels like the red wants to pop through the aqua, then I do that. If it's the other way around, as it was on my first piece, where I let the teal move over the tops of the red, that works too. Okay, well, you know what? I could go on and on forever with this. But as you've seen from this project, this is really fast and simple. As long as you have the right products and the right tools, something like this can go really, really, really fast and be fun to experiment with. And remember, it's just a cheap canvas board. If you don't like the way this one turns out, you can always do it again. In the end, don't forget to use your distress ink to, when everything is completely dry, to ink your edges. And don't forget to do your stamping wherever you see fit after everything is completely dry. Then you're going to tie your string and put on your message. And that's it. Happy Valentine's, everyone. Ciao.